As I'm sure everyone is aware, because obviously, it's been 24/7 coverage of this wall to wall on newspapers, the state of Florida is dealing with a very massive toxic algae problem here in the state. Oh, you didn't know about that? Yeah, it's because the corporate media doesn't care about anything related to the environment. But trust me, the toxic algae problem throughout the state of Florida is very real. It's causing people to get dangerously sick. It's killing marine life. It's killing the tourism industry. It's killing the fishing industry down here, basically putting a big hurt on the entire state of Florida. And for weeks now, we've had politicians going back and forth trying to blame one another. Democratic Florida Senator Bill Nelson blames Rick Scott. Rick Scott, our Republican governor, blames Democratic Senator Bill Nelson. And the truth is, there's a lot of blame to go around to both of those guys and many others. But according to a new report, we can kind of tip the scales on the blame game a little bit and place roughly 95% of it, I'm willing to say, on our Republican governor Rick Scott and his Republican policies. Because as it turns out, Rick Scott has cut $700 million from environmental protection groups here in the state of Florida. Groups that were in charge of preventing and monitoring the spread of this toxic algae that is now choking our coastlines north and south, east and west. Rick Scott is the guy who, under these Republican austerity plans, cut environmental protection here in the state of Florida. $700 million in a state that is 99% funded by environmental activities. Whether it's the oranges that we grow here, the potatoes, those are considered environment because they grow in the earth, you idiots. The beaches that attract tourists from all over the world. And we're letting them be destroyed by this Republican madman because he wanted to save a little money. Here's what happened. Each year, Lake Okeechobee down there in South Florida, after the rain season hits, rises up. They release some of that water through rivers back into the Gulf and to the Atlantic. The two rivers that connect, Atlantic and the Gulf, are so contaminated, so polluted, that any marine life that swims in those rivers dies. That's how contaminated with this toxic algae they are. When Lake Okeechobee rises up, it's also contaminated with the algae. The algae goes through these rivers out into the Gulf, out into the Atlantic, goes up and down the coasts all over the place, killing turtles, dolphins, other marine life that fisheries depend upon, shrimp, crustaceans, everything like that. Everything dies. You can actually get sick just from going near the water and breathing. That's how toxic this algae is. And we do it every year. And Rick Scott decided, I'm going to cut the programs that are supposed to prevent the algae from making it to the beaches. That's the kind of level of GOP incompetence and corruption we have been living with in the state of Florida for far too long. And Rick Scott is now, since he's term limited on being governor again, is actually trying to run for Bill Nelson's Senate seat. And don't get me wrong, Bill Nelson is horrid. This man has taken so much money from the sugar industry, who's actually responsible for all the pollution in Lake Okeechobee, and that's where the toxic algae originates, from the emissions from the sugar industry. Most people don't realize how powerful the sugar industry is down there in South Florida, but it's huge. They give millions upon millions to politicians all over the South Florida area down there. Nonetheless, Bill Nelson is a tick better than Rick Scott. Rick Scott is corrupt. Rick Scott is borderline a criminal based on his, massive Medicare fraud that his business pulled off. One of the largest in history at that point, by the way. He only stayed out of prison because he had to plead the Fifth Amendment more than 70 times in order to not incriminate himself. But now he thinks he can be our senator, and he would be partnered up with Marco Rubio. If that were to happen, and the state of Florida, the governorship here stays in the hands of Republicans, this state is done for. This state is 100% dependent on our environment. And the idiot Republicans who are being put into power by, sorry to say it, the idiot voters here, don't seem to have a problem with that. Even when it kills our livelihood, even when it sends our loved ones to the hospital, for doing that thing we all have to do to survive, breathing. But yeah, keep throwing Republicans in our state legislature and our national government. Yeah, keep seeing how that works out for you. Because there is no one in this state, Republican or Democrat, who would say that things are going well here. And if you want to look at the reason why, I suggest you start by looking at the fact that we consistently elect moronic Republicans who we assume are going to have our best interests at heart, but at the end of the day, they will do whatever their corporate donors tell them to do, and that has essentially destroyed this entire state.